The phone buzzes once on the table. A single notification, nothing urgent, probably nothing at all. But before you've even turned it over, your chest has already tightened. Your heart rate has already climbed a few beats. Somewhere underneath your ribs, a small chemical alarm has already gone off, and it went off before you knew what the notification even said. You pick up the phone. It's nothing. A spam email, a reminder, an app asking for a review. The alarm fades as fast as it came. You forget about it in seconds. This happens to you dozens of times a day, and you barely notice it happening. But the system doing this to you was not built for notifications. It was not built for emails or unread messages or the little red circle with a number inside it. It was built for something that could kill you in under 3 seconds, and it has no idea the world has changed. Your brain is running software that is roughly 200,000 years old, on hardware that spends its day sitting in traffic, scrolling a feed, and waiting for a reply that never quite comes fast enough. The question worth asking is not why you overreact to small things. The question is why, after 200,000 years of everything around you changing, the thing doing the reacting hasn't changed at all. And once you start looking for it, you find the same pattern everywhere, not just in the spike of a heartbeat, but in the pull towards certain foods, the sting of being ignored, the compulsion to check a screen one more time, the reluctance to walk away from something that clearly isn't working. Different triggers, different symptoms, but underneath every single one of them, the exact same ancient machinery, still making decisions for a world that no longer exists.
Start with what the alarm was actually built for, because it wasn't built for you. It was built for an animal standing at the edge of a tree line roughly 200,000 years ago, watching the grass move in a way that grass shouldn't move on its own. That animal has perhaps half a second to decide whether the movement is wind or something with teeth, and the cost of guessing wrong in either direction is brutally asymmetric. Guess predator when it's only wind, and you've wasted a burst of adrenaline and looked foolish to nobody. Guess wind when it's actually a predator, and you don't get a second guess. Evolution does not reward accuracy in a situation like that. It rewards speed, and it rewards erring on the side of fear, because a nervous system that jumps at shadows survives to reproduce, and a nervous system that calmly waits for confirmation does not. That asymmetry, cheap false alarms against catastrophic missed threats, is the exact shape of the alarm system sitting inside your skull right now, largely unchanged, still making the same bet on every notification, every raised voice, every unfamiliar sound in the dark.
The structure doing the deciding is a small almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in the brain called the amygdala, and its behavior has been mapped with unusual precision. In the 1990s, neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux at New York University traced the neural pathway a threat signal travels before you're even consciously aware you've registered a threat at all. What Ledoux found was that sensory information reaches the amygdala through 2 separate routes. A slow route runs through the cortex, the part of the brain responsible for careful, conscious evaluation, actually thinking about what you're looking at. But a second route, faster and cruder, runs almost directly from the senses to the amygdala, bypassing conscious thought entirely. Ledoux called it the low road. The low road can trigger a full fear response, racing heart, tensed muscles, a surge of stress hormones, before the slow, accurate part of your brain has finished figuring out what actually happened. You flinch at a shadow before you know it's just a coat on a hook. You feel your pulse spike at a loud bang before you've identified it as a car backfiring. That gap, the half second where your body has already reacted and your mind hasn't caught up, is not a flaw. It is the entire point of the system. Speed was always worth more than accuracy when the cost of being slow was being eaten.
Here's where it gets genuinely counterintuitive. It's tempting to describe this as your brain malfunctioning, some kind of glitch left over from a more primitive stage of development. But the amygdala isn't broken, and it isn't stupid. It is doing exactly what it was built to do, with exactly the sensitivity it was built to have. The problem isn't the alarm. The problem is that almost nothing in your environment still matches what the alarm was calibrated to detect. Your ancestors' nervous system had to distinguish real threats from a relatively small, relatively slow stream of sensory input, a handful of encounters with the natural world each day. Your nervous system is now processing a volume and velocity of potential threat signals that no environment in evolutionary history ever produced, and it is running the exact same low road, the exact same cheap alarm logic on every single one of them. The system didn't get worse. The world got faster than the system was ever designed to handle.
This same ancient miscalibration doesn't stop at physical threats. It reaches into something that feels completely different on the surface, your relationship with other people. Because for most of human history, being cut off from your group wasn't a social inconvenience, it was a death sentence. In 2003, psychologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran an experiment using a simple computer game called Cyberball, in which participants believed they were playing catch online with two other people, only to be gradually excluded from the game entirely. While this was happening, Eisenberger scanned their brains, and what she found was striking. The neural regions that lit up in response to social exclusion, the anterior cingulate cortex in particular, overlapped substantially with the regions that activate in response to physical pain. Being left out didn't just feel bad in some vague emotional sense. Your brain processed it using machinery that evolution originally built to register injury. That overlap makes sense the moment you consider what exclusion actually meant for a forager living in a small, interdependent group with no ability to survive alone. A person cast out of the group didn't face social awkwardness. They faced starvation, exposure, and predation with no one to share the risk. The brain that treats a cold shoulder like a physical wound isn't being dramatic. It is accurately reflecting what ostracism used to cost. A follow-up line of research pushed this even further. In 2010, psychologist C. Nathan DeWall led a study testing whether a common over-the-counter painkiller, acetaminophen, could measurably reduce the emotional distress of social rejection, on the theory that if the brain is genuinely using pain circuitry to process exclusion, then a drug that dulls physical pain should dull social pain too. Participants who took the painkiller daily for 3 weeks reported significantly less hurt feelings in response to everyday social slights than those given a placebo, and brain scans showed correspondingly reduced activity in the same pain-related regions Eisenberger had identified years earlier. That result should stop you for a second. A pill built to numb a twisted ankle was measurably numbing the sting of being ignored, because as far as your nervous system is concerned, they were never really two different kinds of injury to begin with.
Nowhere is this ancient exclusion circuitry more relentlessly exploited than on a platform built around a visible, quantified measure of social belonging, the like count, the follower number, the read receipt that tells you someone saw your message and chose not to answer. None of these things existed for more than a handful of years anywhere on Earth, and yet each one taps directly into a detection system your ancestors relied on to answer a matter of life and death. Does this group still consider me one of them? A read receipt with no reply isn't a design flaw you're overreacting to. It's a precisely engineered echo of the oldest fear your species carries, dressed up as a small gray checkmark.
The same ancient logic runs underneath your relationship with reward, and here the mismatch might be the most consequential one of all. Your brain's dopamine system did not evolve to make you happy. It evolved to make you seek, to keep you moving toward anything that might carry calories, safety, or reproductive opportunity. Because in an environment of genuine scarcity, an animal that stopped seeking was an animal that starved. Neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz, working through the 1990s, discovered that dopamine neurons don't fire simply when you receive a reward. They fire most intensely when a reward is uncertain, when you don't know if or when it's coming. A guaranteed reward barely moves dopamine levels at all. An unpredictable one spikes them. This was an efficient design for a world where food, safety, and social opportunity were genuinely scarce and unpredictable, where the unpredictability itself was information worth chasing. It is a catastrophic design for a world that has since filled itself with machines built specifically to exploit that exact mechanism. A feed that refreshes with unpredictable content, a notification that might be something or might be nothing, a slot machine engineered by people who understood Schultz's research better than most of the people pulling the lever ever will. The craving you feel to check your phone one more time isn't weakness. It's a 200,000-year-old foraging instinct, still searching a landscape, except the landscape is now a screen, and it never runs out of things to almost feed you. There's a fourth mismatch running underneath all of this.
one that shapes decisions you make every single day without you ever noticing it's there. And it has to do with how your brain weighs losing something against gaining something of equal value. In the late 1970s, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky ran a series of experiments asking people to choose between guaranteed outcomes and gambles of equal mathematical value. And the pattern that emerged was remarkably consistent. People did not treat a potential loss and an equivalent potential gain as mirror images of each other. Losing $100 felt roughly twice as painful as gaining $100 felt good. Kahneman and Tversky called this loss aversion, and it went on to reshape entire fields of economics that had assumed, incorrectly, that humans weigh gains and losses symmetrically. But the deeper question is why a rational-seeming brain would build in an asymmetry like that at all. And the answer, once again, traces back to a world of genuine scarcity. For a forager living close to the margin of survival, a gain and a loss of identical size were never actually equivalent. Gaining a day's worth of food improved your position. Losing a day's worth of food could kill you, because there was no guarantee tomorrow would offer a chance to recover it. In an environment where resources were unpredictable and buffers against bad luck were thin or non-existent, an organism that feared losses more than it valued equivalent gains was an organism more likely to survive a bad season. That asymmetry, once useful for protecting a fragile margin of survival, is still running today, except now it's making you grip a bad investment too long rather than take a manageable loss, or making you stay in a stagnant job out of fear of losing stability rather than risk gaining something better. The stakes have changed almost beyond recognition. The weighting hasn't changed at all.
What's striking is how consistently these four systems, threat detection, exclusion sensitivity, reward seeking, and loss aversion, all trace back to the same underlying condition, a world of narrow margins where a wrong guess in any direction could be the last one you ever made. None of them are separate glitches. They're four expressions of a single evolutionary strategy, one that prized caution and sensitivity over calm, careful accuracy, because caution kept you alive long enough to be careful another day. That strategy worked. It worked for 200,000 years across environments that ranged from open grassland to dense forest to Arctic tundra, which is a genuinely remarkable track record for a piece of biological software. The trouble isn't that the strategy failed. The trouble is that it succeeded so completely, kept humans alive so reliably, that it built the very civilization now capable of feeding it stimuli at a rate and density it was never asked to handle.
Picture a woman on the edge of a small group, moving through open grassland roughly 150,000 years ago. It's late afternoon, the light going long and gold across the plain, and she's carrying 2 children's worth of attention along with her own. She hears something in the tall grass to her left, a rustle that could be wind and could be something else entirely. She doesn't deliberate. Her body has already begun moving before the thought finishes forming, weight shifting toward the children, eyes locked on the grass, heart already pounding. It turns out to be nothing. A bird startled off the ground, wings beating away into the open sky. She laughs maybe at her own racing heart and keeps walking. That reaction cost her almost nothing. It cost a few seconds of adrenaline, a moment of embarrassment nobody else even noticed. But run that same scenario 1,000 times over a lifetime, and the 2 or 3 times it wasn't a bird are the only ones that mattered for her genes to continue at all. Her nervous system wasn't built to be right most of the time. It was built to never once be catastrophically wrong. And that bias, cheap false alarms in exchange for 0 missed threats, is the exact inheritance sitting behind your ribs the next time your phone buzzes on the table.
For nearly the entire span of that inheritance, roughly 200,000 years, the world supplied threats and rewards at a pace the human nervous system could actually keep up with. A handful of genuine dangers a day, a handful of meaningful social interactions, a handful of moments where uncertainty about food or safety was worth tracking closely. Then, in a window of time so short it barely registers against that backdrop, everything changed. Industrialization compressed physical danger into rare, manageable categories. And more recently, in a window smaller still, digital technology did something no environment in human history had ever done. It began manufacturing threat signals, social evaluation cues, and unpredictable rewards at a volume measured in the hundreds per day. Each one small enough to seem harmless,
each one landing on a system that still treats every single one like it might be the bird in the grass or the thing with teeth. Your ancestors evolved to handle maybe a dozen genuine alarms across an entire day. You are asked to process that many before lunch, and the alarm system has no mechanism for telling the difference between a genuine emergency and a push notification from a shopping app.
Consider what that actually adds up to. Researchers studying media consumption have estimated that the average adult in a wealthy, connected country now encounters several thousand discrete pieces of information, messages, headlines, notifications, images in a single day, a volume that would have taken a person living 200,000 years ago months or years of contact with their entire social world to accumulate. Each one of those thousands of inputs passes, however briefly, through the same low road Ledoux mapped, the same fast, crude evaluation system built to answer one question in under a second. Is this dangerous, and can it hurt me or the people I'm responsible for? Almost none of it is, but the system doesn't get to sit out the ones that turn out to be nothing. It has to evaluate all of them in real time, all day, because that's the only way it knows how to keep you alive. Multiply a few thousand small evaluations by every day of an adult life, and you start to understand why a species that survived ice ages, famine, and predation without much apparent psychological strain now reports historically unprecedented rates of chronic stress and anxiety in some of the safest, most abundant environments humans have ever lived in. The danger didn't get bigger. The number of things pretending to be dangerous did.
This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it reframes almost everything modern life quietly blames you for. The anxiety that spikes over an unanswered text isn't a personal failing. It's an ancient exclusion detection system firing at full strength in response to a threat that, for nearly all of human history, would have been entirely real. The compulsion to check the feed one more time isn't a lack of discipline. It's a foraging instinct doing exactly what it was designed to do in an environment engineered specifically to keep it firing. The tightness in your chest at a stranger's raised voice isn't weakness. It's the low road, Ledoux's fast, cortex bypassing circuit, running the same threat calculation it ran for your ancestors on the savannah. Because as far as that circuit is concerned, 200,000 years is not very much time at all, and nothing about your biology has been told that the grass rarely hides anything with teeth anymore. Even the reluctance to cut your losses on something that clearly isn't working, a relationship, a job, a habit, isn't a character flaw you need to white-knuckle your way past through sheer willpower. It's Kahneman and Tversky's asymmetry, still weighting a potential loss twice as heavily as an equivalent gain, still operating as though walking away might mean there's no tomorrow to recover the difference. Understanding where a reaction comes from doesn't switch it off, but it does change what you're arguing with. You are not fighting a personal weakness. You are negotiating with a 200,000-year-old survival system that has never once been shown the modern world and asked whether its assumptions still apply.
So the phone buzzes again on the table. Your chest tightens before you've even reached for it. The same small alarm firing the same way it fired for a woman on an open plain 150,000 years before you were born. You know by now what's actually happening in that half second before your hand moves. It isn't your mind malfunctioning. It's the low road doing its ancient job in a world that stopped matching its assumptions a long time ago. Still scanning the grass for something with teeth, still willing to be wrong 1,000 times over rather than miss the one time it mattered. The alarm was never broken. It's still exactly as sharp as it needed to be 200,000 years ago. Only the grass has changed, and it changed far faster than the thing watching it ever could. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, about the gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next.